Last Epoch is becoming one of the best games in the ARPG genre, and if you're interested in diving in, I can help you get up to speed on the basics without overloading you with detailed mechanics that you won't need to understand until you're challenging the Harbingers. Whether you're a new player trying out the game for the first time, or you decided to come back now that Last Epoch has had some time to grow and develop, welcome to LE for Dummies, the simplest guides in Last Epoch packed with only the information you absolutely need. Let's dive in. One of the best feelings in any ARPG is seeing that sweet, sweet loot drop to the floor. The feeling of absolutely crushing a pack of enemies and watching the screen fill with your well-earned reward. Well, once you get up to higher levels and you start dropping hundreds of items in a single map, you may get a little overwhelmed with how much garbage you need to sort through to get to the one item that you're looking for. Instead of letting yourself deal with the gaming equivalent of reading a terms and conditions document, get yourself a loot filter and part the loot sea to get that one item you've been desperately searching for. A loot filter is exactly what it sounds like. It filters out all the items you don't need and lets you focus on the ones you do. It does not get you better loot. Loot filters use rules to determine what loot to show and what to hide. Last Epoch lets you create your own loot filter, rule by rule, using this incredibly simple in-game loot filter manager. To start creating your new loot filter, press Shift F to bring up the manager and click on this plus sign. From here you can do one of three things. You can create a new one from scratch, import an existing loot filter from your files, or you can paste the filter from a clipboard. Importing an existing filter or pasting from a clipboard is how you share loot filters from other players or from your favorite content creator. Of course, I know your favorite content creator is me, but instead of giving you a loot filter, I'll help you make one later in the video. Importing a loot filter is extremely easy. All you need to do is go to a site like Last Epoch Tools or ask a trusted build creator, and you can download the filter into your game files or just copy paste the loot filter code into the game directly. It's fairly easy and mostly self-explanatory. The copy paste method is much easier to me than finding in-game files, and that's what most build guides will use anyway, but this video is about helping you create your own loot filters, so let's get back to that. Select Create New Filter and you'll bring up the loot filter configuration page. Select a title for your loot filter here and put a nice description of what you're trying to accomplish. You can also pick an icon for the filter and select the color of that icon. This will show up in the loot filter drop-down menu. Not as important, but it is a nice little detail and can help organize your filters after you make more and more of them for different characters and builds. To add a rule, click on Add Rule. You can have 75 of them in total, but I promise you won't need 75 rules. You may not ever need more than 10. I'm going to say this multiple times in the video, keep it simple at first and build on it. I wouldn't start your character with 40 rules unless you're following a build guide. Once you get into the endgame, you can get really specific, but that's only if you want to, and by that time you'll be way more experienced, so adding rules will become second nature. Clicking on Add Rule brings up the Edit Rule screen where you're presented with a couple options. First, let's look at the visibility dropdown. You have three options here: Show, Hide, and Recolor. Pretty self-explanatory. Choosing Show will force the game to show item labels when they drop, even if other rules try to hide that item. Hiding an item will remove the item's label from the screen when it drops on the floor. You can still see the item fall, it just won't have a visible label. And Recolor will change the color of the item's label so you can easily see it when there are 40 other items on the screen. Item labels will fill up the screen pretty quickly, and without any loot filter intervention, they will all be their default colors of white for normal rarity, blue for magic, yellow for rare, purple for exalt, orange for uniques, and green for set items. There are some other colors for specific situations, like the exiled mage items, but that's not important. What's important is that once you get to higher levels and start seeing a sea of yellow and purple, you're going to want to help your eyes focus on specific items. So let's create a rule. Once you pick the visibility function you want, you can start creating your condition. Click on Add Condition, and you'll be given a drop-down to choose a condition type from. This is where your brain will start to explode with all of the possibilities. But don't worry, just because there are a million permutations that could create a billion different loot filters, that doesn't mean you need to get that complicated. To quickly go through them, you can choose to create an affix condition, which gives you the ability to drill down to the specific affixes you want to affect. This will look at each individual affix on each individual item that drops on the floor and execute your rule on that item. You can even ask the loot filter to look for items that have multiple affixes of your choice. You can choose to create a class requirement condition. This one's a bit easier to use. Items will sometimes have a class requirement, meaning that if you aren't that class, you can't use the item. If you want to affect these items specifically, just choose the class you want to affect. Next is the faction condition. There are two trade factions in Last Epoch, the Merchants Guild and the Circle of Fortune. The Merchant's Guild is the faction that allows you to trade with other players. It's like last Epoch's take on an auction house. The Circle of Fortune is the faction that allows you to influence your loot drops out in the world. It's considered the solo self-found faction since you can't trade any items that are tagged with the Circle of Fortune. Using this condition will execute your rule on any items that dropped that are tagged as whatever faction you've chosen. The level condition will allow you to make a condition based on the level of the item. Every item has a level associated to it, so this condition will execute your rule on whatever level items you choose. Another commonly used condition is the rarity condition. This will execute your rule on any items that drop with the rarity of your choice. Simple and easy to use. Then we have the item type condition. Also commonly used, this will execute your rule on any items that fit the item type you choose. Weapons, armor, idols. This will be very useful once you get to higher levels. Last but not least, added literally a couple days ago, you can now filter on specific uniques. If you know which unique item you're looking for, now you can show, hide, or recolor them. You can also add multiple conditions to the same rule, so if I wanted to look for items that have a fire damage modifier and that are rare or exalted, I can add both conditions to my rule, and now my rule will execute on items that have both conditions. So once you set up a rule, congratulations, you've made a loot filter. So now the fun part is adding more rules to refine the loot filter and only show items useful to you. As you're adding new rules, you can see on the loot filter screen here the list of rules that you've added to this specific filter. One thing to keep in mind is that these rules may conflict with each other. The best example I can give you is with class-specific items. In all of my loot filters, I usually hide all loot that I can't use for that build. It wouldn't make sense to spend my time looking at stuff I can't use. Like, why would a dog spend time looking for a pencil? They can't use a pencil, they don't have thumbs. The first rule I always create is to hide every item that requires I be a different class. Class is something you can't change, so those items don't have a purpose for me. But there is one exception: uniques. When I find a good unique on the floor, I don't care if it's not good for my build or if it requires another class, I will pick it up and put it in my stash in case I want to use it for an alt sometime in the far future. This is called unique hoarding. And my therapist says this isn't good for me because it's a game and unique items in a game don't have any real value, but they have real value to me, Belinda, so suck it. Good luck with your IBS. Anyway, as a follow-up rule to hiding class items, I will also create a show unique and set items rule. These two rules conflict with each other, so in order to make sure that my unique and set items show, but all other class items are hidden, I will organize the loot filter to put the unique and set items rule on top of the class items rule. Yes, it's that simple. The hierarchy for rules functions like a ladder, with the top rules taking precedence over what is listed below. Keep that in mind when creating your filter, because once you start adding multiple rules and get really specific with each condition, you're going to run into instances where rules conflict with each other. A nice little trick to give you a bit of help with loot filter management: if you're wondering which rules are affecting an item on the floor that's either hidden or shown, all you have to do is open up your loot filter screen and a little number will pop up on the item labels. If they're hidden and you can't see the labels, just hold X, and by default this will show items hidden by your loot filter. The number on the labels show which rule is affecting that item, so if you want to change something, all you have to do is look at the number and track back to that specific rule. And that's it. That's how you create loot filters. It's not hard to get started, but it is very daunting. I know I wasn't confident enough in my game knowledge to start using loot filters until I'd already played like 80 hours. But ever since then, I've been slowly gaining knowledge of the game, and now I improvise my builds and make my own loot filters fit what I want to play. So don't feel scared to just try it out. This isn't going to break the game for you, and if at any point you feel like you're hiding too much, just press X and all of your items will be there, I promise. But I just spoke words at you for a long time and expected you to be taking notes. I think it's time that we get to see loot filters in action. So now I'm going to build a loot filter live so you can get a practical example.
Oh shit, here we go.
Okay, so first off, I'm going to show you how to create your own loot filter, and then I'm going to show you what an endgame loot filter looks like. So very quickly, making a loot filter is incredibly simple. All you have to do is go to your loot filter screen and then click this plus button right here. You're going to want to create a new filter. If you have a build or following a build guide or whatever it might be, you can paste your contents in from here, but we're going to go to create new filter. From here, I'm going to call this the Rogue Base Filter. Rogue Base Filter. No, I say Rogue. I don't know why I said Rogue. Now I'm misspelling it. Okay, Rogue Base. I said it again. Rogue Base Filter. Double daggers, red, and we're good. Okay, so now it comes up here into your loot filter drop downs, and you can see it in all these other ones that I've made over time. So now the first thing you want to do is just add a rule. So you go in here. I'm going to use a hide option first. So hide and then add condition. Then the first thing that I do for every single character is I create a hide for class requirements that are not the class that I am, right? So if anything drops that requires you to be Acolyte, Sentinel, Mage, or Primalist, I'm a rogue. I'm not going to find that, or I'm not going to be able to use it. So instead, I'm going to hide it all. Boom, easy, hide. That's it. Another thing I can do from here is I can hide certain item types. So I know that I'm in a rogue. I'm probably going to be using either bows or one-handed weapons, dual wielding, or some sort of melee weapon, we'll say, right? So I don't know what specific skill I'm going to use. I don't know what build I'm using. I'm just going to do very generic. So I go in here, do a item type condition, and I look at all my types. One-handed weapons, I am most likely going to be using melee weapons, so I'm not going to select those. I'm going to select caster weapons. So wand, definitely not going to use. Scepter, I might use. I'm not 100% sure. It can technically be a caster melee weapon. I don't know. Two-handed weapons, again, I'm not going to be using caster weapons, so no staves. But the rest of them, they're up for grabs, right? Who knows? Whatever my build might be. And then for offhands, I'm not going to be using a catalyst, and I'm not going to be using a shield. I'm a rogue. You can use a shield as a rogue, but I just know for the fact that I'm not going to right now. It's just not my aesthetic. So instead, I'm going to click those, and I'm going to say hide, item type, those four, and I'm going to add those. Then the third rule that I add in here, which will be the last of like the base things that you want to add, you go to show rarity, and then select unique, legendary, and set. The reason for this is that uniques, legendaries, and sets, these are basically your uniques, your set items, and then legendaries like Weaver's Will items. You want to show those because, or I like to show those, because even though you may not use it for this character, you can pick them up and you can hoard them for other characters. This rule, number 3, will always be on top of the other hide rules. So now, very basic, like I said, you're going to hide any item that you can't use, any item that you don't want to use, and then you're going to show any unique set or legendary items since they are much more rare. Okay, this is my Spellblade level 71. I'm currently towards the end of the normal monoliths. I haven't had enough time to put them through corrupted monoliths yet, but I've decided to make this loot filter specifically for him. I've built it over time, and you can see I only have 9 rules. So don't worry about making loot filters with 40 plus rules or 20 plus rules or whatever it might be. Just make the rules that you need to make and you'll be fine. So you can see here, my lowest base rule is that I'm hiding all items that I can't use, class-specific items I can't use. So Primalist, Sentinel, Acolyte, Rogue, I'm a Mage, I can't use any of those. I'm also choosing to hide 14 different types of items. So for my build specifically, with Spellblade using Flame Reave, I've decided that I'm going to use a specific unique called Jasper's Searing Pride, which means that I have a very specific two-handed staff that I'm using. So I've decided that I'm going to select all these one-handed weapons, because I'm not going to use them, and I'm going to select the majority of these two-handed weapons, except for two-handed staves. So I'm going to hide everything, all weapons, including offhands, other than the two-handed staves that I can use for legendary potential crafting or for exalts, whatever it might be. So I'm hiding all of those. Next, I'm doing 2 things with affixes. So specifically, I know that my build needs a lot of fire penetration, so I'm going to show all items with fire penetration affixes. I'm also going to emphasize. Emphasize is basically just capitalizing the item label. All it does is it does that, capitalizes the item label, so anything that drops, everything will be in all caps. It's just a small distinction, because the next rule is to recolor any item that has specific affixes. So far, I've chosen to show or to recolor any fire penetration or crit strike multiplier items. And that's because my build specifically needs a lot of crit strike multi and fire penetration for large fire damage crit hits with Flame Reeve. So that's just how my build works. So I've decided to use those 3 affixes specifically. You can select more if you want, but they're going to be recolored green. The reason that I have these 2, because they basically do the same thing, I will see that this fire penetration modifier, this guy, fire penetration, the basic one, dragons, which usually comes on amulets, I will be able to emphasize that. So I know specifically that it is this specific affix that is on the floor, because it is capitalized and recolored. Okay, then I was playing with idols, so I'm hiding all idols unless they have specific affixes. So these 2 rules, number 4 and 5, they are specific to idols. I've decided to hide item type idols. You can see here, idols, all of them. And then I'm showing idols, you can see idols, with these specific affixes. And I've chosen 80 of them. There are a ton of affixes. I ended up going through every single one of them and picking out the ones that I like. It really doesn't take that long, but if you don't want to deal with it, you can just, hit the big check marks. You don't have to dive into specific ones, right? But you can if you want. This is how detailed you can get. Okay, and then from a unique set item perspective, that's, again, one of the rules that I always have on there. I want to show all unique set items, even if they are not for my build, just because I like to hoard them. And then you have hide all normal magic items. So this is item rarity. I'm hiding them. Normal magic. Easy. Towards the end game, you're not going to be using them as much unless I have specific modifiers that you want to shatter the item for. But other than that, you end up looking for rares and exalts more often. And then, like I was saying before, there is a very specific staff that I'm trying to use for this build. It's called Jasper's Searing Pride. It's a unique. So I've used the latest condition to come out. I've used uniques here. I've chosen to recolor it as this nice pinkish purple color. And then I've chosen Jasper's Searing Pride from this drop down here. There we go. And that's all the rules that I have for this loot filter specifically. So if you feel like if you feel like insecure because your loot filters don't have 20 plus rules or whatever, just know that you can basically get away with just this. Yes, there's going to be some loot on the floor that is going to show up and you don't want it or need to look at it. But for the most part, as long as you're reducing the amount of loot on the floor, even by a little bit, you're using the loot filter correctly. Okay, now we'll go back to the video. All right, so now it's time to go off on your own and make your own loot filter. Once again, I want to thank you for watching. If you have any questions or if you feel I missed something important for new players, let me know in the comments below. But most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you liked it and subscribe for more content just like this. I hope you enjoy your adventures in Atera, and I can't wait to see what we talk about next.